It hurts so much because the people who were supposed to be your soft place to land became the ones who pushed you off the cliff. And the worst part isn't even what they did. It's that you are still standing there in the aftermath, wondering if maybe you imagined it. If maybe you were the one who broke first. If maybe somewhere underneath all of this chaos there is a version of you that could have kept them close if you had just been quieter, smaller, easier to digest. That ache sitting in the center of your chest right now has nothing to do with work or money or any of the surface problems the rest of the world can see from the outside. It's the kind of hurt that doesn't announce itself with a bang. It creeps in slowly like cold air under a door frame settling into your bones while you sleep. And by the time you wake up, it's already too late to pretend you are fine. What happened inside your family was not a tragedy in the way you're being framing it. It was a transaction, and you were never the one who lost. Think back to that moment. Just think back. Last week, or maybe the week before, you even when you saw the familiar face appear on your screen, and you felt that strange, impossible mixture of love and dread that pulled towards something you knew would hurt you. And you set the phone face down on the corner and walked away. You told yourself you were avoiding conflict, that you were being weak, that you were the one giving up on the relationship. But what you didn't know is that in that moment was that your restraint, your refusal to engage in the same old dance, your decision to finally stop choosing people who had already decided that you were running in the opposite direction. That silence was not weakness. That silence was closing off a chapter that had already overstayed its welcome in your life. You did not find this recording by accident. The algorithm didn't bring you here. Something deeper, something that knows exactly what you have been carrying in the dark corners of your heart, guided your attention to these words at this exact moment. Because there is something you need to hear, and you need to hear it now before you spend another sleepless night replaying conversations that ended months ago. So stay here with me. Don't click away. Don't let this become just another video you scroll past while the weight stays planted firmly in your chest. Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to hand you something you have been searching for without knowing you were searching. A way to understand why the people closest to you became the ones who hurt you the most. A lens that will reframe everything you thought you knew about what happened and why it happened and what it means about who you are. And by the end of this, by the time we reach the end, you are going to walk away with something that shifts the ground beneath your feet in a way that finally makes sense. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The quiet in your house has not felt peaceful. It has felt like the kind of silence that follows an explosion. The kind where you can still feel the shock wave vibrating in your chest. Maybe you sat at your kitchen table this week, staring at nothing, your coffee growing cold, replaying a conversation where someone who was supposed to protect you chose a side and it wasn't yours. Or maybe you were lying in bed last night and the grief came out of nowhere, this sudden heaviness pressing down on your rib cage. And you couldn't explain why you were mourning a person who is still breathing, still walking, still living their life like nothing happened. Or maybe it was even quieter than that. Maybe you just noticed that you stopped expecting them to show up. And the worst part was how unsurprised you were. You were unsurprised. You feel suspended, like you are standing in a doorway between the family you were born into and the life that's pulling you forward. And actually no one told you the crossing would cost this much. And in that suspended place, a very specific story has been whispering itself into your ear. Listen to your words, to your thoughts. The story says that the reason they turned on you is because something is wrong with you. It replaced every time you were too much, too different, too forward, too ambitious, too focused, too unwilling to shrink yourself down to a size that felt comfortable for them. It uses their rejection as evidence for a case it's building against your identity. It wants you to believe that if you had just been more palatable, more agreeable, more willing to disappear into the background noise, none of this would have happened. And underneath that story is an event, deeper one, than you are alone now, that you trapped belonging for something you cannot even name, and that the price was too high. So much high. But what if the opposite is true? What if their turning away was not a sign that you were wrong, but a sign that you were finally right? What if the heaviness you feel right now is not the weight of failure or the punishment for things, for being too bold or too difficult or too unwilling to make yourself small? What if the heaviness you feel is the weight of transition? The pressure that corners right before something new fully forms. You are not being abandoned. You are being separated. And those are not the same thing. What they called rejection is actually repositioning. What you called losing your family is the pruning of every connection that couldn't survive where you were heading. You didn't do something wrong. I'll stop you here. You didn't do something. You did something right. And the right thing in a room that has grown comfortable with compromise will always feel like a threat. The moment when you stopped explaining yourself, the moment when you refused to apologize for your growth one more time, the moment when you finally finally let the silence answer for you. That was not you giving up on them. That was you graduating. Most people never get to this part. They stop at the relief. They stop at the exhale. They feel the liberation from a difficult season, and they think that's the whole story. But the initial exhale, the sense of release from a painful chapter, that's just the surface. Underneath it, there is something richer, something that takes time to uncover. And graduation is not the same as release. When you graduate from a season, you carry something with you. It's not an emptying. It's an endowment. You carry the wisdom pressed into you by the very people and the very moments that broke you open. Just as grapes are pressed, the wild wine, and olives crushed for oil. This wisdom is not theoretical, it's experimental forged to crucify of your deepest vulnerability and the raw edges of your pain. It's a knowing that lives in your bones, a resilience woven into your spirit. But here is something no one tells you about the people who hurt you inside your own bloodline. They were not acting entirely on their own. They were instruments, not a mystical way, but in a way practical way. They were the fiction or friction you needed to smooth your own rough edges, the pressure that carved out the parts of you that were never meant to stay. And the life has a long history of using imperfect, broken, sometimes hostile circumstances to accomplish its most precise and purposeful work. This is of its alchemy, where even the most painful elements get repurposed for something far more vulnerable and resilient than you could have ever become in a season of unwielding ease. Their role, however painful, was often necessary, a testament to life's ability to weave even the threads of human brokenness into something that makes sense later. Consider the story of Joseph. Not the sanitized version you heard in childhood, the one with the colorful coat and the happy ending. Think about the actual moment, the pit, the suffocating darkness, the damp earth clinging to his skin, the primal tear that must have sized his young heart, the agonizing silence of his brothers eating bread, their casual indifference, a cruel counterpoint to his desperate screams echoing from below. Can you imagine the cold dread as he heard the sound of the transaction being made, his own family negotiating the price of his absence? In that moment of utter abandonment, there was no celestial core, no comforting voice telling him this was part of the plan. There was only the impenetrable darkness, the metallic smell of earth, and the deafening sound of people who were supposed to love him, deciding he was more valuable gone than present. And yet, and this is part that has to land in your spirit right now, that pit was not a punishment, it was a passage. It was the narrow gate leading to the fulfillment of a destiny that far greater than any vibrant code could signify. And the people who threw him in it were unknowingly cooperating with something they couldn't see and would not have agreed to if they could. Their jealousy, their hatred, their cruel ambition all became unwitting tools in a narrative that would ultimately save nations. The same is true for what happened to you. Every betrayal, every quiet withdrawal, every sharp word twisted from a vulnerable confession. It all served a purpose. The people who chose a side that was not yours, the ones who went quiet when you needed their voice most, the ones who turned you, what you shared in vulnerable moments into ammunition. They didn't derail your future, they accelerated it. Like a rocket shedding its booster stages, the pressure of their departure propelled you forward with unforeseen speed, because the version of you that needed their validation, that clung to their approval like a life raft, that needed their blessing before you dared to believe in your own path. That independent version of you couldn't survive where you are going. That version would have crumbled. And so life, in its sometimes uncomfortable mercy, a mercy that feels like a surgical incision designed for ultimate healing, allowed the very people whose opinion mattered most to withdraw it, not to destroy you, not to leave you broken beyond repair, but to free you, to untether you from the expectations and limited versions of others, so that you could finally become fully yourself. It was a liberation disguised as abandonment, a profound act of love veiled in pain. And here's where it goes deeper. And I need you to stay with me, because this is where most people stop short of the full healing. Many reach a certain point of understanding, a cognitive grasp of this truth, but they hesitate to descend it into the deeper chambers where the most profound work truly resides. There is a grief that has no language. It's not the grief of death, though it shared a similar hollowness. It's not even the grief of betrayal in the traditional sense, because betrayal implies an intentional act of malice, a conscious turning against. This grief is far more subtle, more complex, and thus often unacknowledged. It's the grief of recognition. Soul-shattering moment, you finally see a person clearly, stripped of all your hopes and expectations, without the lens of who you needed them to be. And what you see with stark clarity is someone who simply doesn't have the capacity to honor who you are. They are not malicious, they are simply limited. Their vessel is too small, their bandwidth insufficient to truly hold or affirm the magnitude you carry. And that grief is complicated because you cannot be angry at someone for the limits of their capacity. Just as you cannot be angry at a teacup for not holding the ocean. You can only mourn the version of the relationship you were hoping for, the one that never existed outside of your own longing. What most people do in that grief is make a vow, quietly without even realizing it. In the searing middle of the heart, they make an internal agreement that sounds like protection but functions like a prison. They say, I will never let anyone that close again. They say, I will keep my real self hidden from now on. They say, I will not let my heart reach toward anyone who has the power to wound me like this. And those vows feel wise in the moment of pain. They feel like wisdom dressed in the language of self-preservation. But they are not wisdom. And you know that they are walls, fortifications, built for just not just to keep out a pain, not to keep you locked in. And walls do their work. They keep the pain, yes, but they also keep out the provision. They block the blessings meant for you. They keep out the people who are meant to come next, the true allies, the soul of your friends, your tribe, the real connections, soul connections that are essential for your unfolding future. They keep out the love that was assigned to you, designed to heal and celebrate the authentic you. These vows will, during pain, ultimately isolate you, create a landscape where true intimacy cannot flourish. And what is coming next will likely challenge the thing you have been most certain about, because the question you have been carrying, the one underneath all of it, the raw, aching inquiry that churns beneath the surface of your conscious thoughts, the ones that surfaces at 3 a.m. when the house is quiet and the grief has no more places to hide. It's not really about them. It's not really about what they did or why they did it, or whether they will ever see what they could not see before. The real question, the foundational inquiry your spirit has been circling without landing on, is this: Can I trust what is being built in my life if the materials used to shape me were people who broke me? Can something good truly emerge from such fractured origins? And the answer is not just yes, the answer is that there is no other way. Because life doesn't build soft things. It doesn't craft fragile vessels for important purposes. It doesn't build people designed to carry immense weight, to walk through fire, to stand as pillars of strength out of comfortable, unblemished material. It builds them out of pressure, like diamonds, like gems, formed in the earth's crushing embrace. It brings them out of fire like refined gold emerging from the crucible. It builds them out of the exact kind of pain that teaches you things comfort never could. Lessons of resilience, compassion, discernment, and unwavering faith. And so the hands that wouldn't wounded you were also unknowingly the hands that worked the clay, pressing and shaping you into the form you were always meant to take. They were instruments of sculpting, however painful they touch. And the version of you that emerged from that breaking, the one that is watching this right now, the one that is learning or leaning forward because something here is resonating with a truth too deep to deny. That version has always the intended outcome. You were not a mistake. You were never the casual. You were always the masterpiece in the making. And every crack, every scar became a line in a blueprint tracing the path to your strength and beauty. Now, here's something you have yet fully controlled, a subtle but pervasive influence that whispers in the quiet corners of your mind. You graduated from needing their approval. A monumental leap indeed, but you have not yet graduated from measuring yourself by the standard they established. Even now, even in your growth, even in your fervent pursuit of purpose, there is a voice in your decision-making that sounds remarkably like theirs. It sounds like their hesitation, their doubt. The way they looked at you when you dared to speak what you were believing for. And they smiled in a way that meant they didn't believe you. And because that voice is so familiar, so deeply ingrained, because it has been present since childhood, you have tragically mistaken it for your own internal compass. You have been calling their fear your wisdom, cloaking their limitation in the disguise of prudence. You have been calling their ceiling your reality, allowing their small version of vision to define the boundaries of your potential. This internal echo is a phantom, their influence. Think about the story of Elijah, not the triumphant version of the mountaintop, but the version under the tree, exhausted, desperate, asking to be done. Because what broke Elijah was not the battle. He won the battle, a decisive victory. What broke him was the moment one person's voice became louder in his spirit than everything that had just been demonstrated. One voice, one opinion from someone who had already proven they were on the wrong side of truth. And it was enough to send a mighty figure running into the wildness, succumbing to the very tear to have just triumphed over. Not because Elijah was weak, but because the enemy knew precisely which voice would reach the deepest, most vulnerable place inside him. The enemy always knows which voice will bypass your armor because it has been studying your vulnerabilities, studying the patterns of your family, dynamics since before the armor was even built. That voice unlocked an ancient fear within him. And that is why it held such disproportionate power. And for you, that voice belongs to someone in your family, a parent, a sibling, an elder figure whose words carried vulnerable weight in your formative years. And it got in deep, embedding itself in the foundational layers of your psyche. What is being asked of you right now is not to hate that person, for bitterness only binds you further. Not to cut them off with malice, for that often leaves a festering wound within your soul. Not to perform a strength you haven't yet grown into. What is being asked is something is more precise and far more difficult. It's to evict their voice from the seat of authority. It was never supposed to occupy inside of you. To dismantle the internal throne they unknowingly usurped in your heart and mind. This is not about external confrontation. It's about internal liberation. It's about deathing or anaka and reinstating the authority of your own spirit. Because here is the tension. The real blockage in your next season is not the wound they gave you. Wounds heal, given time, attention, and grace. This is where we reach the deepest layer. The thing beneath everything, the thing you were not expecting to find at the bottom of this particular wound. You are not afraid of being rejected by them again. That particular wound, painful, has created a resilience. You passed that test, you survived that fire, and your spirit knows it. What you are quietly, almost imperceptibly afraid of is being fully accepted somewhere else. Because if you are fully accepted, fully seen, fully honored in a new room, it will mean that the old room, the original space you've veined to belong to, was never going to be able to hold you. Not because of a flaw in you, not because of a but because of a fundamental mismatch of capacity. And that truth, the searching truth that you were simply too much for the space you were born into, that you were designed for an expanse they couldn't comprehend, carries a grief of all its own. It's the grief that releasing the illusion of a place that never truly fit. Because it means that no version of you, not a quieter version, not a smaller version, not a more palatable or manageable version, not a version that sacrificed its truth for their comfort, would have changed the outcome. They were never equipped for what you carried, never built to contain the magnitude for who you are. And you could not have saved their relationship by being less. All you would have done was delay the inevitable while diminishing yourself. And this is not about their malice, but their limitation. Not about your unworthiness, but your uncontainability in that confined space. And that's not failure. That's clarity. It's a discernment that eliminates the true boundaries of your belonging, revealing where where your spirit is meant to thrive versus merely survive. And it's one of the most painful and most liberating revelations a person can receive. For it shatters the illusion of lack and ushers in the expansive truth of your inherent worth. It's the moment you stop blaming yourself for not fitting into a space that was never designed for you. Now, what I need you to do before you let this message become mere information instead of living transformation within your spirit is this. I need you to identify the voice, not the person. Let go of the person and their actions for that is a different layer of healing. Focus solely on the voice, the specific phrase, the specific tone, the specific internal whisper that sounds remarkably like their hesitation, their doubt, their judgment inside your own head. Point at it, name it, write it down if you need to. And once you name it, once you shine the light of awareness on this insidious echo, you can begin dismantle the authority it was never meant to have. This is the work. Not the forgiveness you perform publicly, not the healing you announce for validation. This is the quiet, daily, sometimes unglamorous work of reclaiming your own internal narrative from the people who were never qualified and never capable of authoring it. It is the sacred, persistent work of disentangling your true self from the inherited limitations and false perceptions imposed upon you. They will beg you for forgiveness. They will. And that is not some distant fantasy, not some vindictive hope you're supposed to feel guilty for carrying. When someone truly sees what they lost, when they realize the space you occupied in their life cannot be filled by anyone else, when they wake up to the reality of what they pushed away, something shifts in them. Here is the truth. Here is the thing you need to understand. Their begging, their apology, their eventual recognition of what they did, that is not your responsibility to wait for. You don't hold your breath for it. You don't make your healing contingent on their acknowledgement. You move forward anyway. Your work. Because the forgiveness they will eventually ask for is not something you withhold until they earn it. They have to earn it. It's something you have already given, not for their sake, but for yours only. Forgiveness is not about letting them back in. It's about cutting the rope cord that ties your emotional state to their action. It's about releasing the grip they have on your nervous system. And if they do come back, if they do finally see what they could not see before, you will already be in a place where their words no longer define you. You will already be standing in a room that fits your room. Now, place your hand over your heart right now and speak this with full intention. I release every voice that was never mine to carry. I release the permission to structure built by rejection. I released the grief of a room that couldn't hold me. And I forgive myself for spending years trying to make myself fit. I declare that my identity was not formed by who rejected me. It was confirmed by it. And I'm not behind. I'm not broken. I'm not too much. I'm exactly what I was designed to be. And the pruning that felt like loss was preparation for what is already on its way. From this moment forward, I move without asking permission from the past. I walk into this next season whole, clear, and chosen. Not because I earned it, because I was always it, and that has never changed. You are not who they told you are. They lost you. Yeah, they lost the person who would have shown up at 3 a.m. They lost the one who would have held them when the world fell apart. And they lost everything. They lost it not because you walked away, but because they kept pushing until there was nothing left to hold onto. And one day when they are sitting in their own silence, when they have no one else to blame, when the distraction fades and all that is left is the truth of what they did, they will back. Not for you to come back necessarily, but for the forgiveness that will finally release them from the weight of their own choices. And you will have already given it. Not because they deserve it, but because you are free. You are not waiting for their apology to heal. You are healing anyway. You are not waiting for them to understand. You are understanding yourself. You are not waiting for them to choose you. You have already chosen yourself. Yeah.